All right, good morning, everyone. We'll get started in a minute. All right, thank you for joining this morning. We're going to go through the basics of ATGenius, and
big email
after
chain
each
going between
section,
all
I'm
of
going
us.
to just
And then
pause for a few moments to
next
see if we have
week,
any
we can
questions.
like
And
tease
I'm
it out
getting
a little bit
feedback too,
more.
so if you don't
And
mind muting yourself as well, and then sure, you can jump in with any questions whenever we take a break after each section. So first off, I'm signed into our test account and we have fake patients in here. If you happen to be part of a group in which you have multiple schools and multiple athletic trainers, and you're the lead person, you would sign in and see all your school choices like this. So the lead person can sign into any school under their contract, or if you're an athletic trainer assigned to multiple schools within a group, you would sign in and select which school you're going to work with in that moment. And the nice thing too is that you can switch schools on the fly without having to log out. All right, so when we first open up our system, of course, you're going to see any alerts. So if you have records that you started a SOAP note, for example, and have not signed and locked it, and a week has gone by, it's going to remind you to sign and lock that record. Also, if you have records that perhaps you signed and locked a SOAP note and have not discharged that patient or given that record any attention for a week or longer, then it will remind you to do that as well. This is our test account, so it does get a little messy because we do some demos and don't always close out records. But also our concussion alert. So if you do a concussion return to play step and you don't sign and lock that individual step, it will remind you about that. And the needs attention will be any records again that you did a SOAP note, the patient is not discharged, but you have not updated that note in some time, it will remind you to do that. And the default is set for 1 week with all of these alerts. You can change that in your account settings if you want. If you want to be bothered less, maybe every 2 weeks, or maybe bothered more frequently every 3 days, you can do that. So in our test account here, we have our most recent history, and we're going to do a SOAP note as a starting point. And one of the focuses today is to show you how to do a quicker SOAP note using autofill. So we have our patient here, Dwight Schrute. If you watch The Office, some of our patients here are from The Office. If we were to enter, you can see there's an unresolved concussion. If you watch The Office, we know that Dwight Schrute gets a concussion. Um, but if you want to add a new injury, for example, an ankle sprain, a lateral ankle sprain, um, we could simply go up to the options and add injury. And then I'm going to scroll down to the foot and ankle area, but you can see these are all the choices. And you'll notice concussion evaluation is just that. It's labeled as evaluation. Just because you're doing a concussion eval doesn't lock you into calling it a concussion evaluation. But these are all of our choices here. So I'm going to go down to foot and ankle, and I'm going to show you the open SOAP first. We have three choices when you want to enter a SOAP note, depending on your style of documentation. I personally use the open SOAP more than anything, but you can certainly use the others. But um, if we go into open SOAP here, This information is all optional, but I would suggest that you fill it in because if you want to run reports later, let's say at the end of your sports season, and you want to total up how many football injuries and soccer injuries and field hockey injuries and the location, the fields, and so forth that they occurred, you'll have all that data. So if you skip a lot of these things, you won't have it. So I'm just going to do some of these drop downs here. And again, all of these drop downs here are customizable. And we're going to say he was in practice, and we'll put today's date as the injury. Again, you can put the time in there, but it's not required. And then from here, we get into the SOAP note. So this will work on any device, whether it's an iPad, a phone, whatever device you use, because it's all web-based. So if we get into the SOAP note here, we're going to pick the side, and let's give a pain 6 out of 10. This is where I want to draw your attention to autofill to help you save time. So if I click on autofill options, I have all these pre-done in my account, which you can do, where we have a grade one lateral ankle sprain. And most of us have been doing athletic training for a while, know how a grade one lateral ankle sprain is going to present. And so we can have all this typed up in advance. In your account settings, you can have the opportunity to make these however you want. Sometimes our ATGenius users think that you're stuck with whatever we have pre-done in account settings that comes with your system. Not true. You can change that however way you want. It's just to help you get started. So in our test account, we have some various autofills ready to go for the foot and ankle section. So lateral ankle sprain, I'm going to just click use. And you'll notice here that if we click through the subjective objective assessment and plan, is pre-done typing. And you could say inverted ankle for most of these lateral ankle sprains, but maybe just finish that sentence. So you can edit these also. We can say inverted ankle rounding first base as his mechanism of injury. And then if we go to objective, if all this is true in this case, we can leave it as is, and we can edit this, change it a little bit. Maybe he's partial weight bearing, not full weight bearing. You can change all of that. And then assessment's already done. This section here is labeling the injury in lay-friendly terms so that when you run a coach's report, for example, it's not going to pick up your assessment jargon in medical terms, grade one lateral ankle sprain. It's going to pick up how you label it here whenever you run reports for lay people so they understand it better. So you want to label the injury simply as ligament sprain. These injury types here are, again, are customizable in your account setting. And then plan, you can make your plan generic. A lot of times in uh, our plan section for autofill, we say begin modalities as indicated and therapeutic exercises as tolerated. You can say that for just about any injury, and then you can add to it as needed. Let's say he's going to be out since he is partial weight bearing. And then any communication that you do, you want to document if you notified the coach, maybe you called the parent about the injury. And then from there, you want to save it. Now, this does not make it permanent. It just saves it for the time being. And sometimes, as we know in athletic training, an injury is better evaluated the next day and see how things set in. And so you can leave it, but eventually you want to sign and lock it. And before I get to that, we have these yellow AT intelligence tips that are spread throughout our soap notes to just help you improve your practice and become educated in various things. So all of these tips are just various things that have to do with that injured body part that you are looking at the time, and they're all referenced or they're based a lot of times on my 30 plus years of experience in athletic training, but 99% of them all have a reference there. Some of them have an image or a photo. So this one's just talking about someone with an Achilles tear may still be able to actively plantar flex the ankle using accessory muscles. I've seen this a few times myself. Um, so don't let the fact that they can still walk on it fool you. Um, so If we get into this here and then we're ready to sign and lock, one of my favorite features of ATGenius is that you can send a text message to the coach, the mother, the father, the guardian that you have evaluated the injury, and it's just going to text the basics. It's going to say the injured area, it's going to say the lay-friendly ligament sprain, and it's going to also indicate their status. So I put out for Dwight Schrute's status. And any notes in here, if you want to say no need to see a doctor and maybe something like follow up with athletic trainers tomorrow at 3 o'clock, you can type in a note. And then once you sign and lock it down here, that makes it permanent. So you would enter the father's text, his cell number here, so you can send it to all three. Sometimes I like to put myself in as the coach and once in a while test it. So send it to myself just to make sure the message is going through and what it looks like. So you can send it to yourself to see what it looks like. And then once it's signed and locked, you have other options. So I was just trying to remember our password for our test account. So used to type my other one. So for Dwight Schrute, now that this record is signed and locked, we have this More tab that is now available that wasn't available before, if you didn't notice when I signed and locked it, before I signed and locked it. When I click More, we have all these other options. And so let's say Dwight goes to a physician and brings back a doctor's note. We can go to add media. You scan that in. You can attach it to his file here. At my high school, we scan in all of our doctor's notes and then put them in a shred pile. And our special education students come once in a while and take our pile of documents to shred. We just make sure we reinforce that these are all confidential. Uh, if you needed to add a treatment, I would recommend you set up your treatment sign-in so the athletes can sign in on their phone. But if you needed to add a treatment for an athlete that maybe forgot to sign in, you can do that here. You would enter the date, the time of treatment, their sport, and it would take you through that process of signing them in. If you have a conversation with a parent or a physician or a local physical therapist, you could indicate who you had that phone conversation with here to document that. Let's say you spoke with the mother, and this was by phone, and then you can add the note up top here. Um, you could put their name, of course, but you could add a note up here of what you discussed, and that will save that in their file. So that is the purpose of that note there, the communication. We have an EAP debrief note. So anytime you have an emergency, you want to have a debriefing about what went well and what could be improved upon next time. So these are on all the sections. So we could have an ankle injury. That is an emergency. And so if you call 911 for something or have a situation, you could meet about the situation with your staff and athletic director or whoever is involved with the emergency and document your debrief note. And this just is saying that, according to NATA position statement on emergency action planning, that we should conduct debriefing. So it just briefly explains the purpose of that note in that section. So back to the more area. Anytime you clear an athlete to return to play, you want to add a discharge note, and that will indicate in the system that they're discharged. And some states, including New Jersey, we have to put why they were discharged. So that's why we have this list of common reasons of why an athlete would be discharged. I am usually behind in this. Sometimes I look back and, oh, I cleared that athlete a week ago. That's no problem. If we check full go here, discharge, we can backdate that. Let's say I actually cleared them last Wednesday. I can backdate that discharge note, and my reasons could be pain reduced functional test was passed and rehabilitation goals have been met. And then you could save that for later or sign and lock that immediately, but it does need to be signed and locked. Uh, Next is a patient questionnaire. This is a patient reported outcome measure that's available in many of our areas, and you can send this to the patient by text message this way. Just make sure you have their phone number in their account settings. But if you were to text it to them, it's basically going to appear like this on their phone, which the nice thing about doing patient-reported outcome measures in our system is that it scores itself and they can just simply do it on their phone and it automatically appears in the system. So it's going to ask them questions about their activities of daily living, walking on uneven ground, stepping on and off a curb, getting in and out of a chair or a car, things like that. And then it starts to get into some sports related questions. And then we ask the patient what is their self-perceived readiness to play. It's always interesting to hear what athletes have to say about that. Their pain level and changes since last visit. Has their range of motion improved? Has their pain level improved? Things like that. Running ability, and then their overall progress, and then the highest level of activity that they think they can tolerate right now. They would save it. It scores it 1 out of 100, and let's say it's a fresh ankle, so maybe they're scoring in the 60s, and then a week later you work with the athlete, you've done rehab, you're getting them moving in the functional direction, and then they redo it, and maybe they score 85%. So it's a good way of checking in with your patient because sometimes we don't always have the time to have a detailed conversation with an athlete about these things. So it really uncovers truly how they're doing. And then you can, if you need to, you can document your treatment efficacy on how you brought somebody from a 60% to a 80% to a 95% and the return to play. And sometimes I share these with coaches to demonstrate that they're not ready yet and what they're reporting. So that is patient questionnaire. You can also add a progress note. And again, all these notes are going to be time and date stamped. So if you moved forward with that athlete and they have improved range of motion, or now they can handle a run walk program on the treadmill or doing some sport specific moves and you want to document that progress note, you can do that here and update their status. And then uh, any progress notes or other things that you do, you can email them specifically to your coach or whoever you want to educate them on what's happening with that athlete. If you need to document a physician referral, that is here. These healthcare providers are fake names, but you can customize these in your account for the common docs that your athletes see. Or if you refer to PT, you could customize that list as well. Some of our groups need to really track their referrals very closely. The rehab card is very nice. If you wanted to add a rehab card for Dwight's ankle, maybe he is doing exercises at home, but even in your clinic, maybe they're doing that and you don't want them to tap you on the shoulder every 2 minutes on what exercises that they need to do next. You can add rehab and then you can create this rehab card here. And then, for example, we can say inversion using TheraBand. We can just say T-band here. And maybe we're using the green one and 3 sets of 12. And you could upload videos into ATGenius that are showing how to do it or an image, and then you can drop them in there, and that will appear for the athlete when they are looking at their list of exercise. But I'm going to just click add exercise here. And then in their rehab card, so far they have this one. So when they log in, you can have your athlete log in. They'll see all of their rehab exercises, and that's a really nice feature for getting athletes to work independently. As we know, many of us are busy with a high patient caseload, and it's nice to be able to have athletes do some things independent without needing your instruction every step of the way. If you discharge an athlete or cleared an athlete and they re-injured themselves, we have the reevaluation. If you mess up on your record and you signed and locked and it's truly a mistake you don't think you can live with, you can request unlock. We don't like to grant that too often. We have you explain to us the reason for it because of legality, we can't just have athletic trainers changing records that have been signed freely. So you have to justify your reason. A common reason would be sometimes, believe it or not, someone enters the wrong injury under the wrong athlete. They thought they were in one athlete's profile and they entered it into the wrong athlete. So that is available if you make a mistake, but we often deny these because there are workarounds to note the error without unlocking the record. Send reports allow you to email all of your reports, printing, of course, and then watch pile would be, let's say you look at a case of lower leg pain and you're concerned with a brewing stress reaction, and you want to remind yourself to check on that athlete a week or 10 days later. You add them to your watch pile, and then an alert will come up to remind you to go check on that athlete. I used to do that with paper records with athletes that I wanted to remind myself to check on. I would just put them in a pile and look through them every few days and say, oh, yeah, I need to check on that athlete. All right, so I'm going to go back to main menu, and I just want to show you a couple other options with the SOAP note, and then we'll pause for any questions. So we'll go to Miranda Kardash. So Miranda's my daughter, and she watches the Kardashians. So if we were to add an injury here, remember that we have, these different areas that we need to first choose from. Let's just go to a knee. I just showed you the open soap, which I recommend because the autofill is available. That's for more narrative documentation, but if you click guided soap, I'm going to skip this stuff here just for time's sake. But if we get into the guided soap, it's going to at first appear very similar to the open soap. And the main thing is going to be that when you get to the objective section, it's going to have a lot of check boxes and other things. So this is the same, but if you go to objective, instead of just having a box to type out positive Lockmans, positive anterior drawer, those types of things in the open soap, in this guided soap, it's what it is. It's guided. So it's going to have a section for palpation. It's going to have a section to indicate observation, all of your range of motion. It's going to give you details to document your range of motion and your strength testing, your neurological tests, and then all your special tests are going to be listed out. So again, when we do the open soap, you would have to type out positive valgus stress test or negative valgus stress test, but here it's all check boxes. And everything else is pretty much the same. So if you're new, if you're, if it's early in your career and you want to make sure you're not forgetting anything, you would probably use a guided soap. We have Katie athletic training students with us, and so initially we'll have them do guided soaps again, just to make sure they're not overlooking anything. Um, and then eventually, I would recommend the open soap uh, for the autofill feature. So again, just these AT intelligence things that pop up. Again, this is a knee specific thing talking about the dial test. So again, you'll see these scatter throughout because we try to educate our members too as they do their documentation. And finally, with the SOAP note, if I go back to Miranda again, you'll notice this record that I just started can be deleted because I didn't sign and lock it. So you notice it's unlocked here. I can actually delete this record because I haven't signed it yet. But if we were going to add one more injury, we'll go with a lower leg. Let's say she has medial tibial stress syndrome. The short note is available for minor injuries, maybe a contusion, maybe a mild case of shin splints. You want to document it, but in your opinion, it's not worth getting involved in a whole SOAP note for it. That's what the short note is for. If you have a true legit injury, I would recommend that you do a SOAP note just to be complete. But again, the opening screen here, just skipping for time. And once we get into the um, lower leg here, uh, there is a questionnaire that we have developed that you can have your athlete fill out. We use this questionnaire on about 100 different athletes to help identify patients at risk for a stress fracture, and it's a point system. So you can have your athlete fill that out. It gives them a score on their level of shin pain. You can send it to them or fill it out right on your device. The autofill is available here. Let's see if we have. So we do have some autofills pre-done. We have one for MTSS. So if you wanted to have this all pre-done in your account settings and hit use, it's going to break it up into your SOAP note for you, make it nice and neat, and that plops all that in there for you, and you can edit that as needed. We just click the side. Stress reaction. I call any cases of MTSS stress reactions because I believe that's what they actually are. Um, and then their status may be limited, and maybe the coach was notified here. And so this is just a one pager short note for more minor injuries. All right, I'm going to pause there for a moment before we go on to concussions to see if there are any questions. Okay, so back to Miranda, if we were to add a concussion evaluation, I'm going to go up to add injury. You have three choices. You can use our concussion evaluation, which I can tell you is probably more than what you need. It is very scat-like, but it has more than the scat. It has VOMs and other things in there. If you complete a paper scat, you can upload that into the system to get you started. Or let's say an athlete was concussed on a Friday at an away game and now sees you on a Tuesday and they've been to the doctor already and they have a doctor's note that says they're concussed and you need to follow their return to play protocol. You probably aren't going to do a scat at that point. It's a little late in the process to do a scat, and maybe you don't want to do a scat because you don't think it's super valuable that far out. You can just upload the doctor's note to get the record started. But in summary, you need to do one of these three things to move forward in the concussion evaluation. So we're going to select ours. One of the first things that pops up is the location of the head impact. So you can just check maybe it was in the top left, for example, and you can spin this around up here if necessary. And then once you get into the concussion evaluation um, aspect, it looks like a SOAP note. The same tabs are here, and you can take your history here, indicating if they have a learning disability or a history of headaches or migraines, and there's plenty of room to fill in important patient information on their history and their injury mechanism. Under signs and symptoms, these have been updated to fall in line with the latest concussion recommendations and position statements that are out there and the symptoms that we're supposed to be asking about. And so uh, you can check off, what they have. They appear dazed or have that blank or vacant look. And then their symptoms here. You would take them through if they have a headache or nausea or vomiting, any balance problems. So you would walk them through all these symptoms here. And then when you get to the exam, this is where there's more than what you will probably care to use. It's just that we need to make everything available for our various requests across our membership and documentation style, but it's got the basics in terms of asking the date, and half the time I don't even know what today's date is, so I don't know if that's a great concussion question to ask. Um, but who are you playing today? Did your team win the last game? Uh, the day of the week, things like that. I will tell you that in my concussion experience, sometimes asking them who they played the game prior is a good one. I had an athlete that was lying to me about their concussion, and that was the question that got them, that led us to the direction that he was actually concussed. Uh, because then he revealed that he actually had some symptoms, but he was saying he was fine, 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 but couldn't recall who he played the week prior. It was a football player. our three trials here, and so I still do just 5 words. I know some of the later recommendations have 10 words. We have put that in there. I think 10 words is excessive. I mean, if you grab unconcussed kids, I don't know if they're going to remember 10 words normally, but just to stay in agreement with all the consensus statements and the latest and greatest recommendations, we do have the extra words there if you wanted to do that. And then coordination and balance, all the things that are recommended that we do. I don't do all of these personally, but there are several options here from dual task cognitive performance to tandem balance eyes closed. The concentration questions, repeating them once backwards, you can indicate their errors, and the digital span repeat numbers backwards. I find most kids unconcussed can't get past the first two. One time I did a little experiment and grabbed 50 kids out of the weight room over the course of a week, and more than half couldn't get past this second one, and they were not concussed. So questionable value there, but we have that in there. And then we have a cranial nerve assessment, the VOMS assessment in here, and then neck exam, and then our delayed memory test here as well. So under assessment, we would write whether or not it's concussion or not, and then we would pick concussion from our lay-friendly term here, and then plan. They're either going to do one of two things most of the time, follow your return to play protocol, or you're going to have some other plan for them, and then their status, and then their communication. I will tell you at my school, I work at a very large high school. We notify after a concussion, we email, we call it God and Country. We email, of course, the coaches, so there's a trail of documentation. We email the athletic director because he wants to know about all of them. And we email the administrative assistant in the athletic office because she tracks them as well. In case an athlete, for example, is concussed the last week of football season, doesn't finish their return to play protocol, and now they're an unresolved concussion, and then in a week or two goes out for wrestling. The safeguard here is that because our athletic office also helps track our concussions, that athlete will not get on the roster for wrestling. That way, you can avoid a athlete mistakenly going out for another sport if they haven't been cleared for their concussion that occurred in the prior sport. All right, so that's concussion documentation as far as the initial injury. I'm going to go back to Dwight Schrute because I think we have a concussion in here. Let me see. I don't know if I completed this one. Yes, I did. Okay. So we're going to sign and lock this one. This I did prior to our meeting this morning, just to fill in some things. We do have the parent notification for this one, but I would recommend calling, if we're dealing with a high school athlete, I would recommend always calling a parent, not texting them about a concussion. Oh, enter my other password. All right, so once we get here, again, this More tab appears signed and locked. And a lot of these things are the same, but what is different is we have our return to play protocol and we have a symptom checklist. So one of my favorite features of ATGenius is that when you go to the symptom checklist, you can text this to your patient. If you're having your patient check in once a day, you can send that to them, and you can click the date to send, for example, today, and to send now or a specific time of day. And if you want to have it repeat daily, some of our subscribers have asked for that, for it to automatically repeat once a day to the athlete. It will do that for up to a week. So you can have that set. The athletes can, if they save the link on their phone, they can just use the same link over and over again. But some people want that to be automatically sent as a reminder. And I like that because if the athlete is home from school due to their symptoms, it's a good way you can still check in with them. If you send the text message to them, this is what's going to look like on their phone, where they can check off their symptoms here. And down there at the bottom, they have to save it. You can't skip any symptoms. So if it's not saving, it's because they skipped one. So that is a concussion symptom checklist available to send via text message to your patients. I want to go to return the play protocol for documenting that, all of your steps. So if we put in, let's say, uh, yesterday they were, um, they didn't do any physical activity, they were just resting. And whether or not they had symptoms, you can put that in here. And I can save this for later, but you do need to sign and lock each of these records. So if you don't sign and lock it, you'll get a reminder to do so. So if they're into the next step, for example, at my high school, the early step we do is riding the stationary bike for 10 to 15 minutes. So these drop down selections here, whatever you're using for your return to play, can be customized in your account settings. So you can put whatever you want in here and that'll automatically appear. And you would indicate your signs and symptoms. And sometimes, if you're, for example, uh, sending them off to practice, a non-contact practice, you might want to save this because it's maybe 2:30 in the afternoon and you're sending them off to their non-contact practice and you want them to check in with you later to confirm that they're symptom free. You can leave it unlocked here and then go back in and then indicate that they were symptom free and sign and lock that record. So that is return to play protocol and documenting that. Any questions on concussion or anything else I've covered so far before I move on to treatment sign in? Okay. So for treatment sign in, I highly recommend that you, first of all, customize your treatment sign in list. So if you go to treatment sign in down here and you get into your, sorry, treatment sign in here. This is where you can customize all of your treatments. And our system does come with default list. Maybe you're doing cupping and cupping's not in the default list. You can simply click add treatment code. You have to keep all the categories the same. So the red category headings you need to keep the same, but then treatment, and then you can enter in a treatment value. At the end of our season, for example, end of fall season, we'll do a calculation of all the treatments that we did, and each of them has a dollar value to show the value of all of our services for the season, and we do that at the end of the whole school year too. So I'm back to treatment sign in. Again, I'm under account settings. The other thing you want to do is download this QR code and hang it in your facility. So Bulldogs is just a sample name. You want to set a school code. For example, at my high school, we're the Eastern Vikings, so our school code is Vikings. And so the athletes, when they sign in, they need to use the term Vikings. So you need to pick a school code and you would type it in here. You can print this out. This is a PDF. You can print this out and hang several of them in your facility, and the athletes would scan this QR code and it would take them to treatment sign-in, which I'll show you in a moment. But I'm going back to options again under account, treatment sign, I'm sorry, not treatment sign-in. We're going to, one moment. Let me see if I can find it. ATGenius school code. I thought we called it treatment school code, but it's ATGenius school code. Um, that's where you would name this for the school code that you're going to use. I would use your mascot name. Hopefully it's not taken, but this is where you would change that to whatever code your athletes need to do, you need to use rather to sign in. So if you go to, I'm just going to go to our general website here and I click treatment sign in. When the athletes scan that QR code, to sign in, this is where it's going to take them. And so the treatment school code for this is ATG test, and it's case sensitive. And I have those fake patients in here. I'm trying to remember the birth date I gave them. I think it's 7/7/75. The athlete would need to enter in their school code, their date of birth, and then they would click sign in. Okay, I guess I correctly remembered the date of birth for Dwight Schrute. Let's say Dwight's a baseball player. So again, this is the athlete view of what they're doing to sign in. They would come across here and pick their body part area. And this is what it's going to look like for them to sign in. So if they've been coming in frequently and they're doing the same thing every day, they can just click repeat from last time. It'll automatically check things for them. But let's say they're doing something different today. If it's his left ankle, and these red headings we need to keep the same, but you can change anything underneath the red heading. So if you pick a new treatment to add in, such as cupping, you would probably put it under treatment and first aid, keep that category the same name, but just add cupping as your new treatment. So anyway, back to the top here. So we have tape and wrap is another main section. So say he was in to get his ankle taped. Let's say he um, received some cupping. We do have cupping in here. Let's say he did some balance activities and therapeutic exercises. You can call that rehab if you want. At my school, we've taught our athletes to know what therapeutic exercises means if they do rehab. So again, this is the athlete's view of signing in, and they would click that there, and then that's done. So if we go back to main menu, I'm logged in as the athletic trainer now. If I click treatment sign in, I'm going to see whoever has signed in for that day. So I did an earlier one at 10:29, just testing the sign in. So that's why there's two of them here. But this is, think about if you have, in the old days, we used to have a clipboard at the front door and athletes would sign in and check off their treatment, but we should move away from that, or if we haven't already, to due to confidentiality and just going electronic. But think about it in terms of that, the athletes are checking off things on a clipboard. This is your clipboard. And then you need to review this every couple days and approve these treatments. And once you approve them, they will disappear from this clipboard and go into their individual files. So you may have a list here and you want to approve these treatments. The reason why we have the athletic trainer have to approve them is because with the QR code, an athlete could lie and sign in when they weren't really with you, because they can sign in really from anywhere. So you want to verify that these things are all accurate. If Dwight Schrute forgot to check off something, I can edit it. You know what? Dwight also got electric stimulation when he was in, and I could add a comment under there if I want, and then save, and then it'll update that record to be more accurate. So from here, we can hit select all. Let's say you have a whole list of them, and then approve selected, and that will wipe this clean. And if I go back to main menu, if I go into Dwight Schrute's actual file, and I go under options here and look at his individual treatment history, we'll see those appear there. And like anything, any progress note, discharge note, reports, all of these can be emailed. So if I click on that, if I needed to send a coach a list of Dwight's treatments, I could do that. And you could enter their email in here and it'll send a secure message, and you can have your name and credentials at the bottom as such with any reports. So all of our notes and reports and options can be emailed individually to anyone that you like. All right. Any questions on that so far? I wanted to go into reports next. So clicking on reports, I would say in my setting, we use the coach's report most commonly. and we'll do the injury statistics report that I mentioned at the end of this season. And if you're tracking medical conditions, if you're having athletes indicate their medical conditions in the system, you can have a report for that. Some of our users are using it to track physicals, physician referrals. I like the treatment statistics report here to show how many treatments we did and the value of those treatments. And if you click on the question mark here, it will just give a brief explanation of what that report does, and it'll send a nice list that you can email or text message to your coaches, and you can highlight things and put comments in there and indicate their status and their treatment compliance and all those kinds of things. Uh, Injury statistics, like I said, you could run this from, for example, uh, the beginning of preseason, maybe started on the 4th and run it to the today if you want it, or all sports or just a specific sport, and whether or not you want to include visiting athletes and things like that. So uh, there's not much in there from that time because we haven't entered data, but it's going to give pie charts of how many injuries happened by sport and field locations and by body part. So when you have a lot of rich data in there, these will come up real nice in terms of the different types of injuries. But we only have a handful that have been entered in our test account during that time period. I'm just checking the chat real quick. So the question for the questionnaires and other things to send to athletes, can we have the option to email it to them? We are not allowed to send text to athletes at my school. And is there a way to backdate treatment sign-ins if an athlete forgot to sign in one day? So as far as the questionnaire, I think that is only email. I'm sorry, only text message. Let me just see for a second. Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure that the questionnaire. I have to go back in here.
My question was really about like the shin questionnaire, the concussion symptoms, like anything that we would send an athlete via text. We're not allowed to text the athletes. I can only email them.
Yeah, we'd have to add that because I think it's all set up by text because most of our members ask for that. And I will say also in my school, we're not allowed to text students either, unless it's through a platform. And so this text messaging system is one way and doesn't reveal your cell phone number. So I was just wondering if administration would be agreeable to that. Similar to using like text a coach texting athletes through GroupMe or Remind or something like that. Because I know our coaches are not allowed to be texting using their personal number.
Yeah,
Um,
our coaches do that as well. But for me, it would be better because then I have their email based on their first name, last name, graduating year. Like it's
yeah,
just easier for me to do that than ask them their cell phone.
yeah, I gotcha. I'm writing that down as an upgrade for us because that does make sense for some people that can't text. So the answer is unfortunately no at this time, but I can put it on our upgrade list to do that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. As far as backdating treatment sign-in, think so, but it possibly can only go back so far. So if I go to Dwight Schrute, treatment, and let's just backdate it to last Wednesday to sport baseball. Let's say Let me see here. Yeah, so it's letting me do it a week back, but there might be a limit on this. I don't know the answer. There might be a limit on how far back it could go. I remember we talked about this. It could be a month, but I don't know the exact answer. But in the short term, yes, you can backdate. Okay, a couple other sections as we'll try to wrap up here in a few minutes. But if you're handing out crutches and coolers, or sometimes we loan out an AED to our cross-country coaches traveling. You can track your equipment on loan items here. And then going back to the main menu, I also wanted to mention the daily journal. You could put notes about athletes in here or anything else that you're doing that you feel you need to document. So, for example, we speak to the football team at the beginning of the school year about proper tackling technique and not putting your head down and initiating contact with your shoulder and the risk of serious neck injuries. And we talk about concussion recognition and being a good teammate. If you notice one of your teammates is not acting right, and you suspect a concussion, to notify the athletic trainer. So all these things that maybe you're doing preventatively that you want to document, you can do so here. And I will tell you that having been through, we had a serious neck injury years ago at my school in which a young man fractured C5. And when the lawsuit arose, one of the things that was asked is what was done to prevent that injury. So if you, as the athletic trainer, are taking steps to prevent a catastrophic injury, it's a good idea to document it and protect yourself. If you notice a hole on the soccer field where somebody can roll an ankle and you notified maintenance several times about it, you can document that you did your due diligence to get the issue addressed. So that's the daily journal. We can view patients, all of our patient, you can go to a patient list, for example, and view them, sort by if they're discharged, not discharged. Uh, if you have multiple athletic trainers, you can sort by who evaluated them, all those types of things in your patient list. But I do want to spend a moment in account settings. So if we go to account settings here, I was in here earlier when I was showing you treatment sign-in, but these are all the areas that you can customize ATGenius. We do have an appointment calendar here where you can set what times you'll take appointments. And we have this set up at our high school because of our kids that are out of their sport and not clear to play. And we don't need to see them for rehab immediately after dismissal. We spread them out um, to later in the day or sometimes earlier in the day during the school day. We set appointments. So if you go to, we're back to the treatment sign-in QR code. This is where they sign in for treatment, but this is where they can schedule an appointment also. So after they sign in, you can tell them to schedule an appointment for next time, and it helps control the volume, which, as we know, it can get quite chaotic. So the appointment calendar is available. As far as getting athletes in the system, we get this question a lot. uh, there's a couple options. One, if you are able to obtain a list of your athletes from another platform uh, that maybe your athletic department uses to have athletes register for the sport, and you get it in a CSV Excel file, you could import all your athletes ahead of time um, in the system, or you can ask us to do it for you. That's one way of getting them all in. Uh, the other way of getting them in is to create, have them create their own account. Have them go to atgenius.com, click on student athletes, create a new account, and then they would enter their information. Um, We tend to handle it at my school as they come in. We have a laminated piece of paper with instructions on how to create an account on the spot. So an athlete comes in with a new ankle sprain, and they're a new athlete. They're a freshman we've never seen before. We tell them to get out their phone, have a seat, and create an account. And that actually buys me 5 or 10 minutes to go work with somebody else. And so if you need uh, instructions as a template for that, they are on ATGenius Academy, or you can email me and we can give you some information to get started on creating that for your athletes or parents to create an account. The autofill content is where you could modify all of those. So, for example, the foot and ankle, I must have started under Achilles tendonitis. I never finished it. So, we have the injury name, and then this is where you would enter in your automatic text under each tab and choose the injury type for reports rather, which would be tendonitis. But you can fill in your subjective objective assessment plan ready to go in autofill. Highly recommend that to help you save time. It's been uh, it's been a good thing for us at my facility. Uh, you can add coaches and staff to your system if you want to email them or text them information about athletes or give them limited access. They can't see your injury notes, but they can see the athlete portal, which I'll discuss in a moment. All of these things here, such as concussion activities, return to learn, return to play, these are all customizable for your drop down for what you're using as your concussion return to play step. So this is where you can customize all those things in there. We do have a return to learn section. At the end of the year, you want to do an end of year grade change to change all of your juniors to seniors and change all your seniors to graduated. So that's what you would do every June. And we usually will send out a reminder to do that. Field locations, all these things are areas of customizable um, sections. You can create a rehab card template. So an ankle sprain, for example, we see tons of ankle sprains. So instead of having to do a rehab card from scratch with every ankle sprain, you can create a template that you can just drop in automatic, kind of like autofill. And then also you can put images and um, videos and so forth in here to add to your rehab card under the how-to section. Your reminder days of how often you want to be bothered with your alerts. It's defaulted for 7 days. Your school logo can be automatically appearing on your emails. Your sport level, if you have team members means other athletic trainers. So if you're working solo, you wouldn't have a need to add a team member. But if you have a Katie athletic training student, they can have their own account, but you need to click that because that will limit some of their privileges and will also allow the Katie athletic training student to do their own SOAP note, but then send it to you as a preceptor for approval. We don't let Katie students discharge an athlete, but they can do many other things because we don't want a Katie student accidentally clearing an athlete without the athletic trainer's permission. If you wanted to give your athletic director read-only access, you can check that. They can't edit, but they can view. If you wanted to give your nurse full access or just read-only, you can select that as well. All right, so team members are for other staff members that you are giving access to your system to edit and or view records. You also want to make sure that you adjust your time zone here because all of our records are time and date stamped. So this way your time is accurate when you're documenting and it's noting your time of day. A couple other things in this area here. This is your information. You can put your license number down there. You want to put your credentials. That way, when you send a report, it'll have your signature and your credentials at the bottom. We do have some institutions that require two-step verification. I find that to be a giant pain that you'd have to do that every time you log into ATGenius because I'm logging in probably 10 times a day. So I don't have that, but some institutions require it. And the other thing, speaking of logging out, if you let your system sit idle for a couple minutes, it's going to log you out. That's because of HIPAA. We can't have the system just staying up at for unlimited time for people to view confidential records. So if you're working on a SOAP note and you get interrupted, make sure you hit save. And so that way, if your browser times out or ATGenius logs you out automatically, you at least have that saved. Some of our subscribers were surprised to learn that they lost something because they walked away from their computer and then ATGenius logs you out. So again, that's a HIPAA requirement that we log you out after a certain amount of time. All right, so that's been about an hour of me blabbing on. So if there's any questions, I'm sure you're tired of listening to me, but if there's any questions that you have, we can address those now. And you can also email us. Some of you may already have my email, my Gmail address, but it is atgeniusemr@gmail.com. So again, atgeniusemr@gmail.com. And if you have any questions that you want to think of later or send me, we can certainly help you with that. Going back to ATG Academy, these are all resources to help you get started. Things like importing data, a beginner to-do list, um, some SOAP guidelines, progress and discharge notes, setting up treatment sign-in, the QR code. We do have a section called preseason documents, which if we go to home, let me see if I accidentally logged myself out. I think I did. So I'm going to go into Dwight Schrute. If we go to options under him, view edit profile, this is his profile. So if you give instructions for your parents and their athletes to create their own account, this is what they're going to see. This is their portal. If you give coaches access to ATGenius, they can only see their portal. They can't see your injury records. But you can guide them on what you wanted filled out. And that's what I do. So we only ask for certain things under athlete info. If they are to use the rehab card, they need to have an email and a password in the system. So if you import athletes, we can't import passwords. So if you plan on using the rehab card or some other aspects of ATGenius, I would have them create their own account instead of importing them. That's why we do it at my school. We have them create their own account. Uh, we also, again, my school is fine with us sending one-way text messages, but the phone number here that they add in will be the text message number that they're receiving their concussion checklist or patient questionnaires. Of course, their grade and date of birth, and things like that. If you're entering a visiting athlete, just make sure you check that because that way they won't appear on your coach's injury reports if it'll keep them out of that report for that sport. If we go to parent guardian info, again, you don't need to ask for all this from the athlete. You can specify what fields you want them to fill out, but that's all the parent guardian info. Insurance info is more for colleges. For example, an athlete is injured on the road and needs to go to the hospital, the coach has access to their portal and can access their insurance card if necessary. You would think maybe the athlete might have their insurance card on them, but maybe they don't. So that's why that section is there. Physical information, medical info, and then preseason documents. If you wanted to upload a parent permission form to play a sport or their physical or some of these things that athletes need to or parents need to sign off on before going out for a sport. In our state, they need to sign off that they understand the concussion guidelines. So that's the preseason document section here that you can upload documents for the parent to download, fill out, and re-upload, or just acknowledge as read so they can check off that they read it electronically. So that's in, again, the athlete portal. Sorry, that got me off on a side note when I remember to show you that. All right, I think that is most of the nuts and bolts of it. And again, any questions, please, I'll hang on for a few moments. If not, you can email me separately. Again, atgeniusemr@gmail.com. I'd like to thank you guys for hopping on this morning. Hopefully that gave you a good overview of our system and uh, just a little bit about us. I've been an athletic trainer for over 30 years, and my brother Brandon does all the coding for it. So I always say I'm just the AT, he's the genius because he makes the ideas happen on the screen. And so it's us two running this business since 2016, and it's grown tremendously beyond our expectations. And our mission has always been to help you document the right way and the quickest way possible because we know how busy we all can be. So, um, with that, I'll end, hang for a few minutes, and thank you for joining and have a good rest of your day.